Let's bring in Jeff deGraaf, chairman and head of technical research at Renaissance Macro. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you, Scott.
So I was going to say, we're about as overbought can be, or at least it seems that way. But you say not exactly quite yet?
Well, yeah, I would say not exactly quite yet. If you look at the percentage of issues that are above their 200-day moving average, it's right around 82%. That number can get a lot higher, obviously. People have a tendency to worry about that number when it is over 80%, but all our work shows that that's a sign of momentum. Where you really want to be concerned about the overall market is when that line's contracting, say, 75 from 80, and the market's still going up. That's a sign that you start losing the participation. So the ascending reading actually for us is good news because it's a broadening of the market. So the very tip top of momentum, the highest momentum names have come under some pressure versus the low momentum names. Hasn't been bearish for the market. It isn't usually bearish for the market, but it usually implies that there's an expansion going on, and that tends to have durability. So I actually think we're still in pretty good shape.
Well, I mean, there definitely has been a broadening, but what about the momentum trade in and of itself? What are the charts telling you about its future?
Yeah, so the last time we were on, right, we talked about that getting into the 90th percentile, and we got to the 94th percentile back last week. And so for us, that's a pretty stark yellow flag that we raise up the pole and say, hey, this isn't really how we want to be, positioned right here. So look for some of these laggards to kick in. And that's what we're seeing out of copper, a little bit out of energy, some of the other material names, some of the chemicals, et cetera, starting to perform a little better. So I think momentum will take a pause. The very high momentum names will take a pause, but that should force the money down to the lesser aggressive names. I think that's going to end up being good news. Still, and I think it's very obvious what's going on, still with this bias towards cyclicality, right? So it's not people fleeing, say, discretionary on their way to Procter & Gamble or a bunch of the staple names. They're actually looking for some other type of cyclicality that they can get exposure to, and a lot of those are showing up in materials here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you make of the materials more broadly. It's been one of the better performing sectors, obviously, and we sort of, we know gold's hitting a record high yet again today. How much room does that have?
I think gold's got another 20% in it, believe it or not. So I think gold is the real deal with this breakout. I like it. The positioning, when we look at small traders as an example through the CFTC, this is not being driven by the retail crowd. Some people would look at that as being a contrarian indication that historically has held up statistically. So these are big money buyers that are pushing this higher, and I think that's got some duration to it. What's interesting is the physical looks a lot better than the equities. So much more a fan of the physical gold market than we are the underlying stocks in gold. But copper really to us is the more interesting play here because we're seeing the breakout in those names. I think there's kind of a global element to this of an improving economy, maybe not so hot that it's just detracting from some of these other areas that people can make money, but certainly shows that, this whole concern, which I think has been, modified pretty aggressively about recession, really is back of the back burner.
What about energy? Leave us with a good thought here because it's ripped. Obviously, it's the best performer in March by a lot.
It's a hard one for us. So momentum's good with energy. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. But the trends on a relative basis still aren't there yet. So we'd stick with the transport names, stick with the marketing names. The big integrated still don't look that good to us. I'd rather steer you towards materials than I would energy. But if you have to be in energy, stick to the smaller cap names and those with the strong relative performance trends, which tend to be transports and marketing.